various students from various legacies of racial category who are not disadvantaged, who are advantaged. And there were two different things said. One of them was, the first thing that you said in your opening arguments, which I think got lost and is fundamental to the American argument about affirmative action, was that without having students who are widely identified for whatever legacy of egregious categorization as black, colored, Indian, and so forth, however outrageous those, without having students who are absolutely excellent, outstanding, tremendously well prepared in the classroom, there will be, in fact, the recapitulation within the classroom, which is a kind of metaphor for the workplace, actually, of precisely the kind of stereotypical difference and inequality and inferiority that has plagued the country since the beginning. So the American argument was precisely, you need to choose top, well-prepared, highly elite, St. John's educated students who are widely identified as black, Indian, whatever. However, absolutely egregious those categories are, because only them in the classroom will produce a true sense of equality, of excellence, that everybody is there, that there is a plateau. Now, if that's all you're doing, you're simply turning a UCT into St. John's. Writ large. So very clearly you need both aspects. You need the idea of markers for disadvantage, be they racial or not, but you also need precisely to focus on students who are precisely identified by racial categories, however egregious they are, who are not disadvantaged. And that's the reason, because otherwise you have no diversity and equality and sense of likeness and sense of admiration in the classroom. It's not just about pass rates, it's about the quality of education. At least that's the American argument.
Hello, my name is Dimitri. It's part of the earlier debate, and I'd like to correct Professor Benatar that at that debate, I was very clear that the apartheid categories were for now, and that we needed to do the work. I was very clear then about that point. The second thing, for how long? Everybody asks, for how long, for how long? And I think what's very important is that we need to realize that class is not just about the working class. Class also refers to the middle classes and the elite. And people are not incorporated into the elite in undifferentiated ways. When I was a student, people considered white were teaching at this university with honors degrees. They earned permanent staff level salaries. They were able to buy houses in the center of Cape Town at 80,000 Rand per piece for 5-bedroomed houses. Those houses are now worth 3 million Rand. Black middle class people today cannot afford those houses. The basic middle class people, we're not talking about the Sechwales of the world. Okay? So I think it's very important that we understand that class is not only about the working class, and race is not only about the working class. Race shapes the ways in which people are incorporated into the middle class, which includes the way in which we are incorporated into this institution. And that is why we need to consider particular new indicators for how to think about those particular differentiations, at the same time that we work towards a more socially just society, which is dealing with social justice far more broadly.
But can I just get your question? Can I ask you this? Your new indicators, is that the indicators that the university is adopting now, or new ones that you want adopted? If I could just ask you briefly.
New indicators that we need to do the work towards.
Such as what? Could you give us an indication?
Such as how many generations of tertiary education have you had in your family?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I want to quote Langenhoven, and I'll quote him in Afrikaans. He said, as die kort pad die beste pad was, so die hoofpad daar langs gegaan het. You know, if the shortcut is the best way, then the main road would go along there. That's what he was saying. What I'm getting at is that by and large, these shortcuts end up in cul-de-sacs. And I believe a racial cul-de-sac is a disaster in a country like South Africa, where we have suffered so much under racial prejudice and racial oppression. I don't think we should discuss the technical issues here. I think the university should be challenged to find the solutions. It's a point that Professor Benatar made earlier. Universities should be challenged to find the best solutions. And Sizwe has come up with some suggestions. I think Dimitri, one or two others have made suggestions. Let's not waste the time of the audience by discussing that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's discuss the principles. The issue of role models, so-called black role models. You know, you can't produce these people. I mean, you can't produce them in some sort of artificial way. The issue is much larger than that. That's what I meant earlier when I said that, you know, perhaps we're asking the wrong questions. To believe that children who come from these private schools and so on are the best material from which these role models will come says something about your class position, your class attitudes. I don't believe that. I think that children who come from poor backgrounds and who've had to struggle to get where they are, like me, for example, people like me are the best role models. I didn't go to a private school. I went to one of these schools that the Archbishop is trying to restore, to a Roman Catholic mission school. And we had to struggle to get where we are. So, you know, the private schools and these ex-Model C schools are not for me. Yes. The breeding ground of role models for the poor. On the contrary. Not suggesting that everybody who comes from there is bad or not useful, not suggesting that. And then I just want to say to everybody, we mustn't oversimplify this issue. We're talking about racial classification at university. It's a particular topic, but it's part of a whole menu of transformation issues, including economic policy in this country, get away from gear, not just from race. For example, it's part of a whole range of issues that need to work together in order for us over the next generation, perhaps 2 generations, to create the kinds of conditions that obtain in most of Western Europe today. If we're lucky, if we're not lucky, we're going to end up in the kind of conditions that obtain in Nigeria or in Angola today.
Max, can I ask you, to start, the question that Professor Ellis asked. What's the purpose of the university? Is it got a political aim, or is it straight academic, in which case there's no compromise?
I think that it's, with respect, and Professor Ellis knows I have huge respect for him, it's mischievous with respect to treat an admissions policy as in the same way that one treats the policy with respect to the outcome and the product. In other words, I would not in any way want the university or allow the university to compromise on the quality of its graduates, the quality of the research it produces, the quality of the publications that are submitted to journals. But one doesn't have to compromise on the outcome when one compromises on the intake. So the compromise of standards, the allowing someone into the university who has had a relatively deficient education, doesn't mean that the consequence is bad research, because you have the opportunity at university to fix that through the academic development programs, through longer periods of study. And in fact, when you restrict the intake to the people who have had the opportunity to go to the good schools and have had you lose access to a vast pool of talent of people who are actually the best in their class. One of the models for admission, which we won't talk too much about technical methods, but another approach would be to take the top 10 students in every class in the country, no matter how good or bad their school, and no matter how good or bad their marks. Because on the grounds that within any particular microenvironment, the best rise to the top, those with talent, those with motivation, those who are overcoming the odds, do the best in that class, you would probably get much more talent, much more potential out of that group than you would through any of our other current marking systems. Now, there would be a couple of consequences. One is that many more people from St. John's would not get in, because you're only taking the top 10 from those schools.
Which would include black students then?
It would include black students, but because you're looking at all the schools, you'd end up with more black students, because there are just more black students in the schools. But the other thing is you would get a pool of talent of people who are actually the brightest. Now, it would take longer to get them to the point that Professor Ellis wants, because their schooling is so deficient in many cases that you would end up with 6 or 10 years. But you could get there. And so I don't think there's any relationship between the admissions criteria.
Then can I just ask one other question to you? University, I mean, are you prepared to commit yourself to the fact that this imperfect system that you adopted at present could be subjected to alteration if we had a serious debate and came up with a different agreement as to how to deal with the legacy of apartheid other than the policy that you presently hold. In other words, could we say that in a year's time, if we worked hard enough on it, we could get a much more nuanced policy, which this university would have the courage to implement, and which would foreshadow a non-racial society rather more adequately than the use of race classification at present?
Well, I fear that my main challenge isn't answered, and that would determine the answer. If your question is, could we make a commitment to measuring disadvantage directly without using race, the answer is yes. And we have made that commitment. It exists in our policy, and we are doing the research. The research has started. Most of the research done so far has not shown up useful indicators such as schools, pass rates, language of parent, education of parent. It turns out not to be that useful, but we are going to get there. But that will, my worry is the different one, that when we get rid of race, we will end up with the bimodal distribution at
No one's
university.
asking you to give us the result of something else. What one's asking is one prepared to actually open up the debate so that we can actually maybe get to something which is far superior, given the ambition that we have to have a society in which race becomes less important in our society. That's, I think, what the challenge has been put to you.
No, I don't understand. I think that we need to keep.
Question.
I think we need. Is your question? Should we do away with race if
No,
we had other
question.
criteria?
Are we prepared to accept? Because you keep on saying, well, we've done the research, and therefore it seems to me what you're indicating is this policy is here to stay for some.
No.
time.
I'm saying we've done the research and we will get there. Within 2 or 3 years, we will have indicators that
Which
are
will
good
be
measures
okay.
of disadvantage.
Okay.
But we
Yeah.
will still use race.
All right. Well,
Because if we don't use race, we will not have.
that's
good black
perhaps for
students.
further workshops. I can't. Further questions? Yes, please.
My question is UCT's race-based policy legal? Is the administration of the university acting legally?
Well, I'm sure the university's taken very good legal advice, and I'm not here to decide that. It may come to me one day. Yes, please.
Had a lot being talked about the Eurocentric and an Afrocentric worldview. Are we just avoiding, or are we not seeing that there's a scientific paradigm that needs to happen? Or is it so blatantly not obvious to people that needs to occur to kind of facilitate what we're trying to treat symptomatically?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
The terms of the debate are, is race a proxy? But you're not interested in it as a proxy. For you, race is the issue, because what you want is to take the top black boys from
And
the
girls.
This is yours is the new black middle class project. You know, this is not about disadvantage and race being a proxy for disadvantage, because then you be talking the language of University of KwaZulu-Natal, where I come from, where they destroy my university. We're doing that. You know? But you be talking about something else. So what actually is going on here? You know, are you talking about disadvantage in terms of class inequality and dealing with poor people and getting them into university? Or are you saying what you really are saying now is that your class project is him? He's not disadvantaged. Come on, man. Let me end with one thing. At Natal, I had a research project, a unit, which scored greatly in the eyes of everybody because I'd done all the affirmative action things. This is the way it went. Justin. No, let me start with Sean.
I hope it's not a big staff.
White boy, son of an alcoholic. Got through university by selling computer programs, computer games. That's how he got there. Okay, managed to get a BSc, that's it, because he couldn't get any more money to do anything else. He came to work for me. Justin, white boy, son of a motor mechanic. Got there by scamming his way by getting a teacher's bursary and then going on and working for me as a researcher. Nikki, daughter of a single mother who worked in a bank the entire time. Why? Who got herself paid through university by going through UNISA and then did all the hard work to come to university. Cabello, the son of a DG, black DG, under apartheid, went to St. Aidan's or to St. Andrews, and Sagan, who was coming from rich Indian parents, never did a thing in his life. When he went away, couldn't even cook for him, for himself or wash the dishes. But according to that, I had exactly your project. There was nothing disadvantaged in regard to blacks with regard to black people who are disadvantaged or whites. Actually, that I managed to come and help, get through the university. What's your project? It's not disadvantage, it's pure race.